Hello, everyone. Welcome. We have some people still filtering in here. So while we're waiting for everybody, do you guys just want to let us know in the chat where you're from? We were just talking on here. You know, we got people from Texas. We got our artist Marla Morrison today is from Texas, and it's raining pretty good down there. I'm in New Jersey. We're waiting for a storm here.
Oh, Claremont. Yeah. Went to school in Claremont, whoever that was. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Maryland. Okay, yeah, how about them cicadas? You know, we've seen a couple up here.
You guys get cicadas? Oh yeah, I guess cicadas are everywhere.
Yeah, all over the Northeast here. So
Yeah.
okay. I'm Colleen Aversa. I'm from Liquitex. I'll be your moderator today. I'm joined by Marla Morrison, as I mentioned. We will be bringing you some summer vibes today. We have a warm and vibrant ocean sunset palette knife painting using Liquitex heavy body acrylic. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind everyone this class is being recorded. So if you're just hanging out with us today and watching, or you want to paint another time, or you feel like you missed something while painting along, you can rewatch this class in about 24 to 48 hours when it's posted to michaels.com/classes or Michael's YouTube. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat. So if you have any questions or comments, just pop them on there. We'll do our best to get them answered for you. Also, keep your eye on the chat. We'll be posting some links and information there that you might find helpful. So that's it really for me. So I'm going to hand it over to Marla to get started.
Hey guys, thanks so much for spending your afternoon with me. I'm always super excited to be on here and share painting information and get to paint with you. So at the end too, I'll probably ask to see what you've created because one, I love seeing it. And two, if you want to share it, we'll, like Colleen said, we'll have some links in the feed that you can share your work. But I love kind of seeing how people have interpreted what we're working on together. So that being said, we're going to work on this really vibrant ocean sunset painting. And so there we go. These are the colors we're going to use. This is our Liquitex heavy body acrylic. And let me just show you what we mean by heavy body if you haven't used it before. So it comes in a tube, obviously, but it's a very thick, it's a thick texture. And that's really nice for retaining brushstroke like you see on the painting. So you could do paintings on your own without any gel added and still get some brushstroke. But in order to make this nice and super thick, we're going to add a gel as well. But you can see the heavy body paint is thick on its own. It doesn't, when you squeeze it out, it doesn't flow over the surface. It was developed in the early 60s by Henry Levison, the founder of Liquitex, in order to give artists more of an oil paint feel because they were used to using oils. Liquitex was new on the market. They weren't quite used to the thinner texture that he originally developed. So he came out with this heavy body color in the early 60s to give more of an oil-like texture and feel to the paint. So that's one of our colors we're going to use, cadmium-free yellow light. I usually like to put my palette out in a value order. So we're going to put the white at the top, titanium white. Of course, titanium white is probably the most popular color we make, but everybody has it in their palettes. It's just a really good white for lots of different purposes. But the cadmium free. All right, now another color we have is cadmium free red light. I don't know if you're curious about why we're calling it cadmium free. I'll go ahead and mention it. Genuine cadmium colors are wonderful, but there are some artists who would prefer not to use a genuine cadmium in their work, just if they have any health and safety concerns, because it is a heavy metal. Even though the cadmiums we use in our paints have always been, they don't reside in the body. If you were accidentally to ingest it, they would be passed through. But for artists who are still concerned about using heavy metals in their work, we've developed this cadmium-free color that is on parity with a genuine cadmium. It looks and performs just like a genuine cadmium, but it doesn't have the health and safety concerns that a genuine cadmium does. So that's why I've chosen those in our palette today. They're really vibrant, opaque colors, and you've used a genuine cadmium, it's really hard to see any difference, if any at all. I don't see a difference, but. So this is a cad-free red light. And then a tiny bit more of a blue shade red is our Quinacridone Crimson. squeeze that out because we need our sunset colors, right? And then the blue I've chosen for today is Phthalo Blue Red shade. You will see in our range that we have a Phthalo Blue Green shade. You could certainly use the Phthalo Blue in the mixing that we're doing, but I will tell you that the green shade would give a little bit more of a green tone to the red mix, and it would be slightly softer. It wouldn't be quite as vibrant. So I chose the red shade blue to mix with my white to kind of be on, more of the similar palette as these more vibrant reds. And we'll see that as we mix.
Hi,
Okay.
Marla, just chiming in really quick. So if someone didn't have the phthalo blue, could they use like an ultramarine or a cobalt?
Sure, you can use, ultramarine is also a really popular color we make, and a lot of artists have that in their palette. You can certainly use an ultramarine blue. It does tend to be more of a red shade blue, and that will be fine. It won't be quite as vibrant as the phthalo blue in intensity, but you'll still be able to do it for this piece, no problem. A cobalt blue, same thing. It's going to be a slightly less intense blue than a phthalo, but it can skew more green, but it'll be okay. It'll all come together in the painting.
And then one more question before we get started. So,
yeah.
If someone didn't have a palette knife.
Yeah. So if you don't have a palette knife, so does that mean they have brushes, I guess?
Or I was even thinking, is there something around your house, like even or a butter knife or something?
Yeah, butter knife, popsicle stick. It would be a little bit more challenging. Or if you have brushes, there's no reason why you can't do this with brushes. You'll just notice I'm going to be kind of dancing around the surface with a palette knife, and I'm not going to be using a brush. The reason I like to work with palette knives for these more quick paintings is that they're very forgiving because you can put the paint on so thick. And with a brush, you have to do a lot of starting and stopping with rinsing the brush, which may sound minor, but hey, sometimes I'm lazy and I'd rather just wipe the palette knife off and switch to a different color as I'm working. But if you don't have a palette knife, if you have something in your house that's similar, you could use that. Or if you want to paint with brushes, the color mixing and everything we do will be the same. It's just that you'll need to be stopping in between to clean your brush with water. So that's not a huge deal. Just I am going to be using a palette knife for this. And let's talk about the Liquitex palette knives. I hope that helped. Let's talk about the palette knives real quick. There's all different head shapes and sizes. The Liquitex knives I love because they are stainless steel. And what that does for you see how crudded up my handle is? Well, the head part looked very much like that, but you can soak it in water for pretty much as long as you need, and the water will loosen the acrylic off the knife, and then you can just use like a little scrub brush to clean it. And the head looks brand new, even though my handle is well loved, right? So I love it for that reason. They don't rust when they sit in water, and so they're very easy to clean. So this is the shape that was on the supply list that we're going to use. It's a narrower point, so as you're working, it's going to give you slightly narrower dab marks. Okay, and so if you're using a popsicle stick or whatever at home, whatever the edge you're using, that's going to be evident in your knife stroke. Okay, so everyone's piece is going to look unique. That's the beauty of making art. You don't want to have it look just like anyone else's anyway. So, but the tools will show up in how you're working, right? It'll leave kind of like, it's almost like someone's handwriting the tool that they use and how they use it, right? Okay, so let's get to our canvas. I've got a pre-primed 9x12, and hopefully that's set up for you well. And to start off, I like to start with the horizon line. Okay, so what we'll do to get that color is I made a violet. So let's take our phthalo blue red shade, and I'm just using a very tiny amount. You don't need a lot for this part. Just scrape it away from the rest of the body of the color. And I'm going to take some of our Quinacridone Crimson. I'm going to get about 2 parts of the Quinacridone Crimson to 1 part phthalo blue. And the reason for that, phthalo blue is a very powerful color. You don't need a lot of it. So if you're my ultramarine or cobalt blue, you might want to try a 1-to-1 ratio of blue to red. Okay, phthalo is just a bit stronger, so you don't need as much of it. And you can see I mixed a very tiny amount. We don't need a ton of it. And then before we paint, we're going to add our Miracle Expanding product. It's our Gloss Super Heavy Gel. So I'll just get it out of the container here and show you. Right out of the container, it looks white. Okay, that's because of the water in the gel. When it dries, if this were in a thin layer, like 1/8 inch thick or so, it would dry crystal clear because it's gloss. If I left it in this thick lump, it would dry slightly milky just because all the water won't have a chance to fully evaporate. When you mix it with your color, though, you will not see any milkiness or any whiteness or anything like that. It will let the color show through. So, and I just saw someone said, what if you don't have the gel? You can certainly just use the heavy body color. It just, the texture won't be as dominant as it is on my painting. You just won't have as much texture, but the heavy body color will hold knife strokes quite well. Now I added about, what was that? I'd say about 7 parts gel to 1 part color. And look, now I have a whole lot of color, right? I don't know if you can see that well on here, but I have a ton of my violet now, just from a little bit of color and about a tablespoon of gel. That's what gels can do for you. Yes, it's a little more cost in the beginning because you're buying something besides the paint, but to me, it's a really economical way to work because gels and other mediums increase the volume of your paint. Now, one other thing you might be able to notice, it might be a little difficult on here, but the violet I originally mixed was darker value than my violet that I've mixed with the gel. That is because that milky whiteness temporarily tinted my violet. When my painting dries, however, it's going to darken back down to that deeper violet color like we have in the painting here, that horizon line, okay? So that can be a challenge for my oil painters because oil color doesn't do that. It doesn't have that value shift or color shift like acrylics. But honestly, once you get used to that concept, it becomes kind of second nature as an acrylic painter. You just know if you add a gel or medium to the color, it's going to look a bit lighter when wet, and when it dries, it will darken down. Okay. So get some of your gel, your violet gel mix, and we're going to bisect the painting just about in half. I go a little bit higher than the midpoint just because I try not to just, you know, do a horizon line directly in half. I don't know. That's one of my personal little rules. It means nothing for you. Is if you want to do your horizon line higher or lower, go for it. But you can see all I'm doing is just dragging color on my knife in a horizon line or in a line. Okay. Now you can see that unlike a brush where you could load up your brush and stroke it across evenly, with a knife, you kind of have to pick up color intermittently and dab it. And that's what gives you more of that knife stroke or textural interest. And you can see my line is thicker here than it is on the painting. We can minimize that when we add more color. So, you know, the idea is you get it on, and then when you do more color, you can minimize it, okay? So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna wipe off my knife. That's literally all we needed. So I added a whole heck of a lot of gel, which I'm sorry, I sometimes do that, guys. I don't mean to waste your product. I just, sometimes for showing it, I add a little bit more than you might need. But don't worry, one thing I've done with my paints, if I mix too much, I'll have little, you know, those Tupperware, or not Tupperware, like plasticware containers handy, and I'll scoop up my paint and put it in an airtight container so I'm not wasting it. So yeah, sorry about that.
I do that same thing. I use the those little, you're talking about those little plastic cups with the lid.
Yes.
In and stuff, the ketchups and mustards at like game.
Exactly. That way you
I
don't
always
feel
have
like,
those on hand.
Yeah. You can always, you know, break out that color again when you need it. And another thing I'll do too, if it's too little amount for me to save, I'll just swipe it out on a piece of watercolor paper or other paper, and then I can use it to make collages later. So definitely I'm all about not wasting paint. I want to make sure that, you know, I mean, painting can be an expensive proposition, so you want to get the most bang for your buck. And that means if you've got extra paint on the surface, figure out what else you can do with it. Either save it for your next painting or brush it out on another surface, that kind of thing. So anyway, so back to our horizon line here. Let's do this. I'm going to start with the sky next. Now, really, I don't even remember for sure how I did it before. I don't know. So, and this is me, right? I'm one of those people, I'll do a painting. I'm like, oh, how did I approach that before? I'm not quite sure. But you know what? That's the great thing about painting like this is it's not super particular about how you approach it. Okay. So on the sky up here on our original, I want to use my CAD-free red light because I want it to be a really warm, kind of hot red up there. So I'm going to take my CAD-free red light just as is, and I'm just going to start dabbing it on. Now, you can work from my painting as an example, or if you have your one of your own. Oh, you know what? No, I forgot to add gel. I'm going to add some gel. No big deal. I'm going to add some gel. But you can, I distract myself a lot. You can work from your own painting or work from my painting and a sunset in your head, whatever it is. But the point is we want to get a nice, warm, vibrant sky. So, all right, guys, I want to add some gel to it. So I scooped out about a little, pretty close to a tablespoon of gel. And I'm going to go ahead and mix that into my CAD-free red light. This is the really fun sensory part of it. I'm sure you guys have seen those videos out there where it's just people mixing paint because it's fun to watch people mix paint, right? To me, it's a super fun part of the process. So when I use a palette knife, this may be a minor detail, but I like to scrape the palette paper, push the color to the center, and then work it down with my knife and just do that over and over again. And that way I feel like I get a nice mix of the gel and the paint. The really another cool thing to say about the gel or other mediums for Liquitex is you don't have to be exact with your proportions. Like I don't have to worry that if I put a ton of gel and a tiny amount of color that it's going to compromise the way my paint dries. That's not going to happen. It's going to be good to go no matter how much or how little gel I use. So I think of it as being very user-friendly for that reason. Okay, so now I've expanded the volume of my CAD-free red light and I can just go right back over what I did. It's not going to make any difference to the painting at all. And I'm just going to dab in my thick texture CAD-free red light. Now I'm kind of just wanting to focus the warmest red, the deepest warm red at the top of my painting. And you can talk about color temperature, like this is a warm red, this is a cool red or whatnot. And that's fine to do, but I like how Liquitex does it and that we talk about color bias. So this red, I'd say, has more of a yellow bias, whereas the Quinacridone Crimson we're going to use next has more of a blue bias in comparison. And the reason that's nice is it can really help you when it comes to color mixing to understand if you've got a yellow bias red, that's going to help you to make a vibrant orange if you mix it with yellow, right? It's all about color mixing. If I mix a yellow in here, it's going to make it a much more vibrant orange than if I take a blue bias red and mix it with yellow. It's going to be more muted and soft. So anyways, I'm kind of distracting myself, but that's why I like talking about color bias instead of just color temperature. Okay, so the next part of my sunset here, I've taken that CAD-free red light and I'm mixing it with white, okay? So I'm gonna get some more of my gel. And guys, I'm cleaning my knife off on paper towel before each time I dunk it in my gel, just to keep my gel clean. But I'm gonna put some of that gel right there next to the white. And you know, you could do this all first. Like if you're sitting down to paint, you could just mix gel into all of your colors first. Just because I wanted to talk about it individually, we're doing, you know, color by color.
Hey, Marla.
Yeah.
So everybody's enjoying watching and they love your teaching vibes. That's great. I just wanted to ask, someone asked, when you're using the palette knife, are you putting the paint onto the canvas at an angle? Are you spreading it flat? How hard are you pressing? If you can describe sort of how your technique with the palette knife, that would be awesome.
That's a great question. So let me mix up the next color and then I'll hold the canvas up so you guys can see that. Great question. So let's mix up that lighter value CAD-free red light. So I literally am just going to scoop part of it over next to my white. And again, this is not an exact science, guys. I'm just kind of thinking, you know what? I want about 1 part white to 1 part of my CAD-free red light. And so I'm going to mix that. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good. Maybe I'll make it a slight bit lighter. So I'm just gonna add a dab more of my titanium white and mix it. So you can see now we've got a lighter value CAD-free red light. Okay, so yes, so the way I'm doing the palette knife, I'm loading up my knife with some color, right? I don't want a razor thin amount of color. I want it to have some dimension to it. So maybe, what is that? I don't know, 1/4 inch of color at the thickest. But how I'm doing it is I think of dabbing, right? So I'm just, I guess the angle is, if this is the surface, I'm at a, I don't know, I'm not good with math, guys, like a 30-degree angle, maybe, is that right? 30, the point is like a 30-degree angle. And I'm literally just dabbing it. And as I'm butting up to that CAD-free red that's already there, I'm letting them mix and blend, because that's what adds interest and variety to those color mixes. That's exactly how easy it is to do it. But yeah, I'm not doing, like, I'm not taking my knife and going flat like that. I'm dabbing more. So it's maybe just the top third of the palette knife that's touching the canvas, if that makes sense. All right, so now I'm gonna put it back down so it's not so wiggly for you guys. And I'm gonna add more. And you can see how once you get the hang of it, you can cover area really pretty quickly, because it's just about how fast and quick and loose you want the dab strokes to be, or the knife strokes to be. And the other thing too, I can get the color down, and then when have the whole painting, you know, more finished, I can come in and adjust some of the marks I made. So I don't have to really fuss with it too much right now to, like, oh, I want it to look more like a swoopy sky or something. I can just quickly dab the color down, and then at the end I can come in and make it a little more more deliberate marks, right? So let's go back to this color. I'm going to now add some more white to it. And I just want another, like, kind of more of a peachy tone now to make the sky continue in gradations. So guys, I just do it right. You know, I don't feel the need to put it in a separate part of the palette, because really all of these colors are getting slightly mixed together on the canvas too. So it's okay if they butt up against each other in the mix, and it's okay if it's not, you know, perfectly mixed too. Again, to me, that kind of adds interest to, you know, how these colors are working together on the surface. And so let's go back to the reference. I'm just kind of dabbing in this lighter peachy part of the sky.
I love somebody just compared palette knife painting to basically finger painting, but for adults who don't want to get their hands dirty.
You know what? That's excellent.
Best comparison.
I'm probably going to use that now. Thank you. No,
So
that's
great.
that's really great. Yeah. I think sometimes, like, kids are always great, right? They're so non-intimidated by art materials. And then something happens as we get older, we can see areas that we wish we would have done better. And then we get frustrated with our skill and so on. I think that's exactly right. A finger painting or knife painting, it's just so less intimidating, I think, than brushwork can be sometimes, even though you're still using your skills, you're still using your craft and your hand to get it on the surface. I think that looseness helps, the looseness of application helps keep it from being so intimidating. So yeah, thank you for that. All right, so let's get this little burn of kind of rosy part of the sky going. And so now we're going to jump to our Quinacridone Crimson. Now, it is lighter in value than this, but I'm pretty sure what I did before. Oh, I need to add my gel, don't I? Let me do that. So I'm going to add some more gel. This time I'm taking about a little more than a teaspoon, and I'll mix it in. And that's the other thing too, there's no rule of thumb. I could have mixed whatever colors I wanted and then add the gel. You don't have to add the gel first. It's just whenever you're ready to add gel, you mix it in. And I don't remember if I said this before, the more of a gel or medium you add to your color, the more transparent the color will become. That could be a non-issue for you. If you're painting thickly, transparency isn't quite as obvious, but if you're painting thinly, that could be exactly what you want too, because it could help with glazing. So just know the rule of thumb is the more gel or medium you add, the more transparent your color will become. Okay, so I'm not going to even add white to my Quinacridone Crimson. I'm just going to start dabbing it in this area because this is a wet on wet technique, right? That wet Quinacridone Crimson is blending in with that wet, peachy, cad-free red light. And now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take a tiny dab of titanium white, and I'm just going to add that right on top. So this is another way to do it can be really loose, is just to mix on the surface, that wet on wet technique, okay? And you'll see that your colors aren't completely mixed, but again, that kind of adds some interest and variety to the surface. All right, as we're moving down, I added some of the warm sky. We're going to add more peach right here. So we'll just go down. And you see, I'm just kind of blocking in the color this time. Now I am using the palette knife in a more stroke-like motion. Sometimes I'll do that if I want to block in the shape, and then I'll come back in and add the texture on top. That's just another way to do it. It's kind of like you're filling in the shape that you have. And notice too, guys, that I am using the knife to blend in these two color sections as I'm working. Okay. Everyone talks about acrylics drying so quickly. They do dry quickly when compared to oils, but this thicker texture, heavy body color mixed with gel gives you quite a lot of working time. So you don't, in this hour-long session and even after, you would still have time to manipulate, the color as you need or as you want. All right, so this always happens with me too. Sometimes I mix too much color, sometimes I don't mix enough. So I'm going to mix up some more of my cad-free red light. Just take a little bit here, and I want to add white because I want to do another peachy section on the left part of the sky. So again, I'm just mixing right on the surface. I don't have to separate it and put it in a new area. I just love that part of the painting where it can just be so intuitive and you don't have to worry or fret about, oh my gosh, I've got to get a whole new clean area for my color. Because it's not about perfection, right? It's about having fun with it and watching it evolve on the surface. And seeing, oftentimes I'll think about painting as a kind of like a conversation. What is it telling me now? What do I need to do? Or what do I think would be good here? And then just work with it, adjust as I go. So back to thinking of adjusting as I go, I want to now add some more of my Quinacridone Crimson on top. So I'm going to just take it directly from the palette. I want another little warm kind of, what's the word, wave or highlight here. I can't think of the right word, but a little warmth here.
It's like a shadow, like a sunset shadow.
Yes, thank you. Sunset shadow in the sky.
We have one question coming, or a couple of questions, kind of the same question floating around, I guess. If you didn't have the gel,
yes,
first of all, do you need the gel? Second of all, could you use, what other things could you use? And people are talking about modeling paste.
Okay.
What do you
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. So I don't think you absolutely need the gel, but the result will look a little different, right? It won't be quite as thickly textured and it won't be as glossy. When I use heavy body color on its own, it dries without any gel added. It's more of a satin sheen when dry. So that's fine. If you want it glossy when it's done, you can put a gloss varnish on top. But also by not adding the gel, the texture won't be quite as evident. You'll still have knife stroke, but it won't be quite as beefy of a texture as you have with the gel. The other thing to notice too, you'll have plenty of time for working with this painting, but you won't have quite as much working time as you would with the gel, because when you add gels and mediums, they give you longer working time. If you don't have our super heavy gloss gel, you can use modeling paste. Modeling paste, if it's our modeling paste, it will tint your colors. So just know that if you mix it uniformly with all of your colors on the palette, they will all be lighter value, because modeling paste has marble dust in it and it tints your color permanently. So when it dries, it still stays lighter. So just know that. If you have a different gel that's not gloss or super heavy, that's fine too. You can use that gel, and if it's a lower texture gel, you'll just have less texture. Or if it's a matte gel, you'll just have a matte gel or matte sheen finish. What is modeling paste anyway? Modeling paste is a gel that, or it's a thick texture. It almost looks like this white paint, but it's not paint, okay? It's essentially acrylic medium with marble dust, and it gives really thick texture, but because it has marble dust in it, it tints your paint. If you don't like that, you could always put the texture down first with the modeling paste and then paint over it. A lot of artists like it if they're into sculptural texture, because you can sand it, drill it, carve it, and so on when dry. The gels are too soft for that. So it's good for those really sculptural painters who want a lot of texture coming off the surface, or if maybe they want it super smooth and they want to be able to sand it. Okay. So let's keep moving down. Thanks for the questions. I really always like them.
And just let us know too, we're about halfway through. So just to know.
Okay. Sounds good. We're doing it. We're doing it. Okay, so let's move down to the sun, which we're going to put right in the center of that horizon line. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to drag a little bit more of that peachy color down, because I want to layer my brighter sun on top of it. So I'm going back to my peachy, salmony light, or tinted CAD-free red light. And this is where I am kind of dry knifing it. You talk about dry brush, this is dry knife. So I'm just using a little bit of paint and I'm just kind of scraping it in. Because now what I'm doing is I'm kind of informing myself as to where the color block is for the painting, if that makes sense. Like I'm realizing, okay, I want this part to all have this tone, and then I'm going to paint over it with texture. And you can see that I'm kind of leaving a, is this a semicircle? Yeah, semicircle for the sun in the center. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the CAD-free yellow light. And because I want to have it just with white, I am going to scoop some up and move it over here. And I'm not going to worry that I got some of my CAD-free red light in there. Oh, and you guys can't see that very well. Here. Okay, make sure you can see it. I've got a little bit of my CAD-free red light in there. That's fine. I'm going to mix it in because I want a really rich yellow. The CAD-free colors, especially, they're yellows, oranges, reds. They already are very nice and vibrant, but adding a bit of heat through the CAD-free red light to my CAD-free yellow light makes it even warmer. Okay. So now I've mixed the color that I want. Now I'm going to add some gel. So see, sometimes you add gel first, sometimes you add it after you mix. It's really your call. All right, so that was about a teaspoon of gel. Again, you don't have to be super precise about it. I just add a little to get that gloss and to beef up the texture for my knife work. I'm going to mix it in. And now we're going to put this warmer, deeper cad-free yellow mix right near the horizon line. And now I'm adding some texture back in. I'm moving my knife to more of that 30-degree angle. And I'm going to make this a lighter yellow, so I'm going to come over here and add my warmer yellow over here. And you may notice that I'm kind of cutting into that horizon line a little bit. Remember I talked about how if you want to make it thinner, we're going to do that with the addition of color on top. So now I can kind of refine my horizon line with this additional color next to it. Okay. Now I want, going back to my sun here, now I want a creamier yellow for the sun to show that it's like white hot and just blazing, right? So now we're going to mix that up and then we'll have that radiate upwards. Keep cleaning my knife in between, not because it's super important, it's just makes it a little easier when I'm mixing fresh color. So now I need a little more room. I'll push these out of the way. I'm going to mix it right here. I've got white with, I'm not even going to bother adding gel to that because I already have gel in my white. So I'm going to take, let's see, what was that about? What would you say that is? About 1 part color to 1 part yellow to 5 or 6 parts white. And we'll see if that's about what I had in my mind's eye. I have to sometimes adjust it. So that's pretty close to what I was thinking. If you need to adjust yours, just do so. You can add more white, you can add more yellow to get whatever you have in mind for your blazing hot sun there. Okay. So I've got a good amount on my knife now. I want to load it up because I want this to be really, I just like it to be the focal point of the painting. So I want it to have a lot of texture to it. So now I'm just going to rough it in and, you know, how I see that sun shape to be, that semicircle. So we'll just dab that on. If I feel like it's too small, super easy just to beef it out over that. I always say beef it. I don't know why I say beef it so much, but it's really easy to kind of paint it out over that undercolor. And then we're going to refine it now. So to refine it, now I'm going to add a little bit more white to some of that lighter value yellow I've already mixed. And that's just going to add some more interest and value change. So I added probably 1 part white to 1 part of my already light yellow mix. I'm going to load up my knife again, and now I want it to have kind of like a highlight on the top. And you know what? I want it to be even more of a highlight. So now I'm just going to take some pure white and just put it directly on there. This is where it's like back to that finger painting. It's like more like, to me, this is also like cake frosting, like frost it up, you know, get it nice and thick how you want it. And flush that out a little bit. Okay, now you can see, since I'm right-handed, my strokes kind of have that natural, you know, all the dabs are from the right to left. If you're left-handed, it's going to be opposite. If that bugs you, you can move your knife around different ways to get different stroke marks. Or since you have, you know, I could turn my canvas, but I'm going to try and keep it stable for you guys, but you could always turn the canvas too if you need to adjust how you want the knife stroke to be. Now in the original here, we've got some of that light yellow radiating out over that peachy color. So we're going to do that now. I already have some paint on my knife, but I'm just add a bit more. And I'm just going to have it kind of dance out of the center of the sun there. And just dab it, dab it, dab it. And you know, I'm trying to work quickly so we get this done, but of course, this is kind of, to me, one of the most relaxing parts of it too, just kind of playing with that paint on the surface and adjusting it, you know, playing with where you want each stroke to be. When you get towards the end, you evaluate it and like, oh, okay, I don't really like how this part's working. I want to add this color, or I want to blend this better, or whatever you want to do. But again, the gel and the heavy body paint gives you that freedom to kind of mess around with it and think about it a bit before you're done with it. Okay, so I want to kind of nip in the edges of the sun here. So I'm going to take some more of my deeper value cadmium. I'm sorry, my lighter value cad-free red light. And I'll just nip in the bottom of the sun there. And I'll have to contort my hand and do it over here too. I just think that kind of helps it a little bit. And then I want to fill in some of that white. You can certainly let some of the white of the canvas show through. I remember Van Gogh is one of my favorite painters, and when you see his paintings up close, you realize he left a lot of the canvas showing in his super, you know, around his super thick brush stroke. So I've really learned to embrace that concept of sometimes leaving little bits of the canvas showing through helps the rest of the paint pop from the surface. So that's just that's certainly up to you and what you want to do, but just my 2 cents there. Okay, so I'm going to go back to one of my lighter value cad red light, and I'm going to kind of just merge these colors a bit by, see how now I'm not working in one small area, I'm kind of just going across the whole section because I'm wanting to kind of soften and blend, not fully physically blend, but just visually blend those colors by dabbing them together. That makes sense. Okay, now, yeah, I'm getting stuck in playing with this, but I want to make sure we have time for the whole thing. So now we're going to drop down below the horizon line, and I've got a darker kind of salmon color down here. So let's mix some more of our cad-free red and a little bit of white. So that's probably 1 part white to 5 parts red. And I'm gonna add 1 more part white to that. And you can see my knife isn't that clean. I'm getting a little bit of yellow in there. That's, to me, that's all okay. And you guys will have your own little bits of other color in there too. You can, if that bugs you, you can certainly be a little more fastidious with your color mixing. I just feel like it all kind of comes together on the same surface. And I actually kind of embrace that slight mixing that happens without, you know, on accident, so to speak. All right, so now I'm going to load up my knife, and I'm going to nip in that horizon line a bit. And now I've got my knife flat, and I'm going to just stroke it downward. So I see how I'm cleaning up that horizon line. Here, I don't know if you can see it. I'll move it up. So I've got paint on my knife. I'm bringing it up to the edge of the horizon line and just stroking downward. And that is nipping in my horizon line, making it a little more crispy, a little more refined, and blocking in my reflection on the water. Okay, so and then the next part, this is a little bit darker value than I have here, and to me that's okay. No painting is the same, but I do want to transition to a little bit lighter tone. So now I'm going to mix some yellow and white with my cadmium free red light. So I'm going to take this mix of yellow I had off to the side, and I'm going to mix it straight away into my slightly lighter value cad free red light. And I wanted to mix, so I'm mixing yellow, So I'd say that's 4 parts of the Cad-Free red light to 1 part yellow and 1 part white. And that's what's giving us this kind of interesting peachy color that now I'm going to, I'm blocking it and then I'll dab it. So blocking is when I'm just talking about, you know, getting that color on there quickly. And then dabbing it is when I get a thicker amount and pounce on that texture.
I'm just going to
So,
here let you know that we have about 15 minutes left in the class, and you know that this class is being recorded. It'll be available 24 to 48 hours from now. You can go to michaels.com/classes or Michaels YouTube to view it. Yeah. And then also, if you're painting along with us today, we'd love to see your artwork. And if you want to tag us in that, you can view the hashtags. I'll put them in the chat, and just make sure you tag us so that we can see your artwork.
excellent. All right, so let's get to that pink reflection in the water. So we're going to use our Quinacridone Crimson. I'm going to scoop some of it and I'm going to put it right over here, just so I have a little room. And then I'm going to take some of my white. So we're talking 3 parts red to 1 part white. I might need to adjust it a little bit, but let's see what we got here. Sometimes I feel like I just need a giant piece of palette paper, but we'll make it work. All right, I want to add more white. So now we're talking, what, 2 to 4? Does that sound about right? And I still need it lighter, guys. So I'm going to add some more of my titanium white up here because I'm running out. And because I already had gel in my Quinacridone Crimson, I don't feel the need to add it to my white. So now, let's see, I'd say this is more of a 1-to-1 ratio of white to red. That's a little better. So it's really just it's like a warm pink that we get. In the interest of time, I'm going to block in that pink. You can kind of see where it's going to go. And then now I'm going to take thicker amounts on the tip of my knife and I'll just kind of pounce it on there. And you can see I want to put some of it up in that orange color because I want to give that visual blend to the, you know, to transition between that orange and pink. All right. And I want this to be a little bit lighter, so I'm going to add some more white. So now, guys, sorry, sometimes I'm really off with my proportions. Let's say that this is probably, now we're talking probably 4 parts white to 2 parts red. But again, this is not an exact science and it's not about perfection. It's kind of responding to the surface of the painting and seeing what you think it needs. All right, so I've gotten the pink a bit lighter. Now I can just come in and pounce that on the darker value pink that I have. Yeah, and that's where, to me, this is how that, the lovely quality of that, of the palette knife and that quick stroke work just really makes it look like it was an effortless painting, right? Because it just has that, every stroke has that freedom to it. Okay, now let's get to our blue. So we're going to go to our phthalo blue red shade. And I want to make sure you can see the mix here. So let's do this. I'll move it to this section right here. Take about that much of the blue, and I need to add some gel to it. So let's take about 1 part gel to 1 part color, mix it together, and you can see Remember that milky white gel is going to temporarily tint my phthalo blue and make it look lighter. But if I didn't add any white to this, it would darken down to that deeper, vibrant phthalo blue. But I do want it to be lighter. So I'm going to add some white. I'm going to try and, it's okay if I get some of that pinky color in it. I'm just going to scoop. Don't need it too light. So that's 1 part white to like 6 parts blue. Mix it about. All right, now I'm going to start at the bottom because this is going to be my darker value blue at the bottom. And I can block in some of the blue. And usually when I do these kind of landscape pieces, it's just like a weird little idiosyncrasy. I don't really like the line of color to be completely flat. So I usually kind of, like I did in the sky, I had the red kind of in a upside down U, and now I'm going to have this in a U shape. I don't know. That's just a thing. You can do whatever you want. I just kind of usually think that on the top and the bottom. I like it to have a slight kind of like it's a vessel, just kind of cupping the rest of the painting, if that makes sense. And then, so we've blocked in the deeper blue. Now let's add, I'm going to move that out of the way a little bit. Let's add some more white to half of my blue here, because I want a little bit lighter blue. You can see why we know that titanium white is probably the most popular color we make, because we've used it in just about every color on this painting, and that's a pretty typical stat for most paintings that you see. A lot of the colors they'll have titanium white with it because it really can give you a lot of variety with your color. All right, so now I'm going to block in that lighter blue, and this is where we're going to transition between that pink and the light blue, and also with the dark blue. So I might do that first. I'm going to blocked it in, and then now I'm going to dab it on top of that darker blue. Here, I'll raise it up so you can see. Oops, sorry, went off screen. So you can see I'm just dabbing it on the deeper blue. And now I want to transition with the pink. And what I found before, it's usually a little bit easier to put the lighter value color on top of the darker value color. So what I'm going to do is go back to my pink and dab it on top of my blue. So I'm going to clean my knife and get some more of my pink on the tip of my knife again, and then start in the pink and then just kind of drag. I'm not physically dragging that pink down, but I am. That sounds weird. That sounds strange to say I'm mentally dragging it, but I'm imagining it kind of dragging down on top of that blue. I am also trying to get as much of that pink on my knife so I can dab over that darker value blue. And it's okay if it mixes a little bit on the surface, that's okay. Notice that I'm making my knife strokes a little bit smaller, because that can also help visually blend it without physically mixing it too much. So I don't know if you can see the difference. See how the knife strokes up here were big and loose, and now I'm making them smaller because I'm trying to just, visually blend that blue with the pink. And I try to think of the whole area, not get too focused on one little area. I'm trying to look at the whole line and transition it. So we roughed that in pretty quickly on the bottom part. Now what we can do with we have 1 or 2 more minutes, and then I want to see what you've done. I'm going to look at the whole thing, and I'm going to decide, you know what? that pink, it doesn't jive with the rest of the painting. I want to change the strokes up a little bit. So I'll just take some of my existing pink and I'm going to go back and I'm going to just minimize those brush strokes with smaller knife work. So I'm just taking more of that a little bit darker pink and dabbing it on top of some of the larger expanses of pink I already had. Oop. And look, you see how I got that blue in there? Super easy. I can just scrape it right out and put my pink back on it. That's why I love knife painting. It's so easy to correct any little blips.
Very forgiving.
Very forgiving. The paint already is so user-friendly and forgiving, and then you add the knife technique. It's just like, it's just very, makes you feel very relaxed because you're like, oh, no biggie, I can fix it. Or leave it, whatever. But. Okay, so I don't, like I said, this is the part where you can keep going and going because it's fun and relaxing, but I really do want to see what you guys have done. I will do one last thing to the sun. I want it to look a little bit looser. So I'm going to go back to my light yellow. I'm just going to feather out the edge a little bit. You know how every kiddo puts the rays of sun? I'm like, well, I got to put rays of sun on my sun. A little tiny bit of feathering of that, just to kind of soften that dome shape a little bit. Oh, and we got to do the reflection, guys. Sorry. So the reflection is the last bit in the water. Go back to that yellow that you have and get it on your knife. And then you're really just going to imagine putting some, you know, lines down into the water like that. So just some lines of that yellow on top. It scoops up some more. You want a decent amount because you're covering wet paint. And just think of these, you know, we've all seen sunsets on the water, right? Just kind of envision that reflection dancing on the water. I need, darn it, I need a little more white. I'm going to add some white. And I don't need to worry about gel at this point because it's just going to be a little bit of white here because I really want to pop that part of the reflection. So I'm just taking white, wet on top of some of my yellow strokes. Oops. And then last thing before I see what you've done, we're going to take a little bit of that deeper yellow and I'm going to cover my horizon line here because I don't really want that super dominant through the sun.
That looks so pretty.
Okay, so there we go, guys. Let me see what you've done. I really want to see how it came together for you. Thank you. Thanks. Anyone paint with me here? Let me move over. Awesome. Great. Shayon looks wonderful. Ivana, Radka, Aubrey's working. Nice, Sue. Oh, I like your square format. Yeah, you don't have to do rectangle. That's nice. Very cool. She's got a lot of, AJ has a lot of the ocean. That's great.
Oh, these look so great, guys. Thanks for sharing with us.
Yes. Ooh, I love the heavy texture on Pam's and Sudhana. How did I say that right? Sudhanya, sorry. Oh, and Sanchi did a beautiful one. Great, guys. Ooh, I love the variation of color there. Fantastic. So thank you so much for painting. And I wanted to tell you, I would love to, if you would share these with me. I don't know if you're all on Instagram, but my handle is at Marla Morrison Art. So I don't know if you can see this. Yeah, my handle is at Marla Morrison Art. If you tag it there or tag me, I can then post it on my story to share with others what you've done. Also, if you want to post it to at Liquitex Official, and then at Tefacna is a wonderful site on Instagram that has tons of technical information. So if you're someone who really gets into that aspect of painting and likes to know about gels and mediums and all those kind of good things, that's a great source. And then if you share it with hashtag Make It with Michaels and hashtag Michaels Classes, they also have areas where your work could get posted and featured. So just know about those things. And I really appreciate you guys spending your afternoon. I hope you continue to have a creative rest of your day. And thanks so much. Colleen, I don't know if you have anything else you want to say, but
Thanks,
thank you.
everybody. I just wanted to say, make sure you check back. We are always posting new classes. In fact, Marla will have a class coming up. It's not posted yet, but coming up soon at the end of this month. She's going to have a watermelon, using the same technique. Yep, so please check back and sign up. And also there will be a survey for this class. You'll receive it tomorrow. So if you want to let us know how much you enjoyed it, and if you have any ideas for some future classes, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Colleen. The other thing to mention on the watermelon is that if you bought the colors for this painting, I was realizing you already have like 3 of the 5 you'd need. So it's another great way to use the colors you already have. So all about economy there.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the class, and everybody have a great rest of the day and week.